Okay, so my name is Gethin Roberts, and we are talking about the top pitfalls to avoid when designing, manufacturing, and launching a new product. Okay, so the purpose of this is to share my experience, 20 years experience in designing and manufacturing new products, so that people in the future, so if you're wanting to develop a product now, or maybe you're part of a business team that's developing new products, then hopefully this insight will be able to help you to avoid many of the common pitfalls that even within established businesses and large organizations that I see them falling into these traps time and time again. Okay, so why do I want to talk about this? And it's really because that ultimately, if you're clear on many of the challenges ahead before you even embark on the product development journey, then you can save a significant amount of time, money, and frustration. Okay, so why is this actually important? Why do you need to know about the pitfalls before you design a new product? Because product development is inherently risky. Research and development is inherently risky. And it's important that you do as much as you possibly can to be able to reduce that risk and make sure that ultimately, when you launch a new product into the market, that it does satisfy the customer requirements so that ultimately it will generate a return on investment. But what many people don't actually see is that there is a significant failure rate in products that actually don't get to market. And this statistic from Boston Consulting is testament to that. So around 70 to 90% of products actually fail to even launch. And it's interesting because as a consumer, you never see these products. You never see the products that don't actually get to market. So there's a huge amount of research and development, product development that never sees the light of day because of this. And actually, even those products that do launch, only 60% of those actually generate a return on investment. And again, the next level on from that only 20% of those products that do launch survive the longer term. So these statistics are quite staggering in my view, and there's all sorts of reasons why products fail to get to market. Okay, so if you're listening to this presentation or you're watching this on YouTube, this will hopefully be useful to you if you sit in one of these categories. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're a startup company, or maybe even an SME, hopefully that you'll find this useful. And as I say, my experience is based on 20 years of working with all different sized companies, even large organizations, and even within well-established businesses that you may consider successful, they do commonly fall into the pitfalls that I'm going to talk about today. I'm not going to talk about any particular sector. My experience is largely based in the consumer sector and also the medical sector. But what I would say is that the pitfalls that I am going to highlight are agnostic of that. So if you are developing a medical device, you're likely to see same kind of challenges as if you're developing a consumer product, for example. We are going to talk about physical products rather than digital products because there is a fair amount of crossover in terminology. But ultimately, the aim is to manufacture and launch a new product. And by that very nature, it's physical products that we deal with here. Although I will slightly contradict myself because some of the physical products that we also create does have a digital element to those as well. Okay, so how can I talk about this? As I said, 20 years of experience in designing and manufacturing new products. I'm the managing director of a design consultancy called ITERATE Design and Innovation. We're a small design team. However, we have over the past 10 years worked with in excess of 500 businesses. We've launched or been involved in helping to launch over 50 products. And the reason why there's not a direct translation between 500 businesses and the number of products that we've actually launched is because many of the products that or projects that we've worked on, we will work on a discrete aspect of the design process. So that might be helping a company manufacture a product exclusively. It may just be helping them create some new design solutions around a particular concept that they want to pursue. Or, it could be specific problem solving around how do you identify an alternative material for a product. So it's not in every instance that we work from concept right the way through to manufacture. Testament to the design team here, we've actually won 8 European Product Design Awards, and we've authored the Product Innovators Handbook, which touches on it actually expands on many of the themes that I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so these are some examples of products that we've developed over the years. And down the right-hand side, there's a number of different medical products. So the one in the middle that's being held by the hand with the glove is a sepsis diagnosis device. And that's used for diagnosing sepsis within 2 hours using a blood sample. And then on the left-hand side, the triangular product, that's actually a high-powered bathroom air purifier. And then on the bottom left-hand side, that's actually a footrest, which also doubles as a balance board. So what I would say here, the products that I've highlighted are largely either medical or consumer based. But the technical complexity of all of these is quite different, from the footrest, which is what I'd consider to be quite a low technical complexity, right through to the medical devices, which have got a much higher technical complexity and technology involved in actually creating those and making those happen. Although what we do is that we go through the same process, no matter whether we're developing a consumer product, medical product, or if it involves electronics or mechanics, that process is exactly the same. But the depth that we would go into at each of the phases within the design project varies. Okay, so that's some examples of the kinds of things that we've worked on, and that's will hopefully give you perspective on many of the pitfalls and the lessons that I've learned. Okay, so the agenda. These are 5 points that we're going to talk through today. So understanding the user and the problem you're solving, following a structured product development pathway, the realities of intellectual property, selecting the right manufacturing partner, your total business costs, and then how can you actually act today? Okay, so the first pitfall that I see people falling into is not clearly defining the problem that they're looking to solve, and also the user. So I believe that every new product actually has to solve a problem, and there's a few kind of categories that this can sit into. It can either be create a product that's cheaper, that improves performance, or can actually allow the user to do something more efficiently. So these are examples of problems that I think can be solved in new products. And I think also what we've seen as well, products that are more sustainable than those that have gone before. That's also a problem being solved in the consumer's eyes. So once you've identified what problem your product is going to solve, which is critical, because many products are launched that don't solve a problem, and I think that then impacts on their appeal. But also really being clear about who you're looking to sell this to, because when you are clear on what the persona or your customer profile actually looks like, then you can directly translate the features and the benefits that you incorporate into your product. Because what I see often is that many customers that we work with, they want their products to do, 5 different things or 10 different things. And then invariably what ends up happening is that there's a misalignment there between what the customer values and what the product is actually doing. So the most successful products that I see are those that do something very well, even if it's just 1 or 2 things, rather than trying to do lots of things and not actually solving those problems or performing those functions particularly well. Okay, so there's different techniques that you can use to help gain clarity on who your customer is, building out personas, understanding where they live, what their lifestyles are like, what they value. It's all really useful data to gather and to build up, because it also feeds into your marketing as well, that you can more clearly communicate your product to those people if you really know who you're selling to and what is the problem that you're solving. Okay, so a structured product development pathway. The process of designing new products is well understood. It's taught at universities, and it's been established for many years. And businesses or well-established design teams do follow this process. Although many businesses that we come across don't follow a structured design process. Now, the reason why you need to follow a clear stage-by-stage process is because it will help you manage the risk. What you're always wanting to do is to make a go-kill decision. Should we continue with the project, or should we kill the project? And I think that a common pitfall actually is that many businesses will, once they've started a project, they will continue with that product development until launch, and then it fails. But actually gaining customer feedback and taking a moment to have a reality check on, do we want to continue with this project at various stages? Should we kill it? Is it a better investment for us to not pursue that project and put our money into another product development rather than continuing with that? So going through a stage process of activities, and these activities will typically take the product through research, concept, development, prototyping, manufacturing preparation, and then launch broadly. And at each of those stages, at the end of it, making the decision, do we want to go forward? So we've created our own framework to manage the risk and to design products in a methodical way. And with this process, we actually call it the RPD pathway, the rapid product development pathway. And we put a real focus on understanding the technical challenges at the beginning of the project as much as we can, so that we can solve those challenges sooner, rather than having challenges appear later on in the project that are unexpected. So it's like following a map when you're going somewhere on a journey. You need to have a clear process and map in place when you're developing a product, and ultimately it will help you manage your commercial and financial risk. Okay, so intellectual property. There's lots of misconceptions around IP, and I'm not here today to necessarily dispel those myths. But what I would say, the key pitfall that I've want to talk about is being strategic with your IP. And the reason for that is that many businesses that we deal with, their automatic default response, once they've decided to create a product and they've developed some concepts and feel that they've got a fairly clear idea, will file a patent. And there's been instances where a client has filed a patent, they've then come to us, and maybe what they've protected is completely unfeasible, technically unfeasible, unworkable, would really make a bad product in the market, but it's been protected because there's an innovation step involved in what they've actually filed. So knowing when to actually file IP is important because sometimes it's better to do that later in the design process rather than earlier. So that's one key thing. But the other is, do you even need IP? Do you even need a patent? Because if you are creating a medical product or you are working in a highly competitive sector, then I would suggest that a patent is almost essential. If you're wanting to build the business to be able to sell it in time, then absolutely, that IP will retain value within the company. And so therefore that would be it's useful to have. It's a good investment. But if you're in a fast moving consumer sector and that first to market is more of a competitive edge, then filing a patent might not be the best thing to do. So being strategic with your IP is very important, and thinking through, do you even need a patent, first of all? And then beyond that, is design registration more suitable for the type of product that you're wanting to protect rather than a patent, for example? So the difference being that design registration protects the aesthetic of a product, and you can see here the trunk key they use design registration to protect this product, whereas a patent normally protects a process or a mechanical operation or feature. So the benefit is really that design registration is much more affordable compared to a patent. It's also quicker to actually go through the protection process as well. So it's worth not only firstly deciding what form of IP is suitable for you. Do you need a patent? But which is a better form of IP for your particular product as well. Okay, and it's probably worth caveating that with the fact that I'm not an IP attorney, although that the insight that I provide is based on many of the experiences that I've had working with businesses of all sorts of sizes. Okay, so your manufacturing partner and engaging your manufacturing partner and when you should actually do that. So what's important to decide on early really is the manufacturing process. So understanding how many units you're likely to sell when you launch the product and having visibility of what potentially that scale-up plan looks like is essential. And I'll give you an example, the footrest that I talked about briefly at the start. There was a few different ways that we could potentially manufacture that. So we could possibly 3D print that product, or we could injection mold that product. And there's other different ways that we could actually physically make it, but is it economically viable to 3D print it compared to injection molding it? And the difference is the investment needed between the two different processes. 3D printing doesn't require setup and tooling. Injection molding does. So there's that benefit that 3D printing has got a lower barrier to entry, but the unit costs of injection molded products are far, far cheaper than 3D printed products. So it really depends on the volume, the sales volume, as to whether investing in injection mold tooling and accepting a lower unit price is advantageous over 3D printing. So knowing the volumes is important to do that up front, because when you go into your design project, you're designing for a particular process. So if you're designing a product for injection molding, it's very different to when you're designing a product to be 3D printed. So making that decision sooner rather than later is important. But also some key decisions around where you're planning to manufacture the product. You know, is it advantageous to manufacture your product in the Far East, or maybe is the UK a better place to do that? And there's different pros and cons really around why you would manufacture in the UK compared to China. It's not always about cost. You know, sometimes it is about quality of communication. Sometimes it is the cost of shipping. Sometimes it is security of supply. So there's all different factors that you do need to consider. And it really does depend on the type of product that you're actually manufacturing. A medical product, for example, may have different set of considerations to a consumer product. So it's important to have discussions with potential manufacturers early so you can decide on the location of manufacture. But also the manufacturer will be able to provide really good guidance on how you should maybe design the product or develop the product in a way that's optimal for the solution. And so even with years and years of experience, we're always very keen to engage a chosen manufacturer as soon as possible, involve them in the process so that there is a nice handover from design to manufacturing rather than a blunt handover from there's the design team and they throw the design files over to the manufacturing team and for lots of challenges to occur, which can happen. And so it's that concurrency is important. So engaging your manufacturer early is a key consideration and a pitfall that many businesses fail to do. There are instances where manufacturing teams are in-house. We've worked with companies where they need extra support. They may have a design team and they may have manufacturing in-house. And so that discussion and that communication is much easier because you've got the team locally. But conversely, many of our clients as well are using subcontract manufacturers where this is kind of then becomes much more relevant. Okay, so business costs, and quite interestingly, I spoke to an angel investor recently, and they said to me, because we were helping one of our clients raise investment, and they said, if the product costs 10 times more to develop than you expect, and you're still going to make profit, then I'm interested. And I thought that was fascinating because we do see many projects overrun for all different reasons. You know, extra features being added in the design process, maybe key challenges arising later on down the line that maybe weren't anticipated. And as I mentioned earlier, having a clear stage process in place will help reduce that. But products do generally take longer than many people anticipate to develop, and therefore the associated cost in doing that. But as I said, we have a process to help mitigate against that, which is in response to this particular pitfall. But even with that in mind, what we do see happening quite often is people not considering the entire business costs. So they may have factored in the design costs, they may have factored in the manufacturing costs, and even logistics and shipping. But then when it may come to marketing and total business costs, there's often oversight there. So they may have raised enough investment to be able to get their product effectively to market. But then beyond that, all of the additional business costs to be able to promote and sell that product, we see that being overlooked quite commonly. So this is an important factor that people do need to consider. Okay, so I've given you an overview of 5 pitfalls that we see commonly occurring, and I've hopefully given you an explanation or a way of being able to mitigate some of those challenges. And if you've got a specific project in mind, or maybe you've been burnt by some of the challenges that I've talked about, then I'm happy to have a discussion or a call with anybody else that's joined the session today, or maybe is watching this retrospectively. I'll come on to that in a second. But one of the things that we've actually fairly recently created in response to many of these challenges is something that we refer to as the 2-week launch lab. And the purpose of this is it's a fixed cost, but it's a really intense 2-week period of work where we help our clients explore a new design idea, generate concepts, carry out research, and then build functional prototypes for them to be able to demonstrate a new product to the market. It's also very helpful for being able to raise investment if that's what you're planning to do. Gather customer feedback and gather assurance that actually this is a product that solves a problem, that meets customer needs, and that's wanted, and that actually will sell in enough volume to be able to generate a return on investment. And so once that activity is actually being completed, then you can, from that point, lead into the wider development project to refine, test, develop, prototype, and then prepare the product for manufacture. And so the 2-week launch lab is critical, really, because it really helps businesses reduce their risk early and to avoid scenarios where hundreds and thousands of pounds are being spent on developing new products, carrying out the research and development, and then finding maybe after launch that the product is not wanted or it's not successful. So being able to create your design assets sooner, test the market, better understand the financials involved in developing the product before then proceeding into the major investment and the wider design project is how we work with businesses, and it's proven to be effective so far. So, if you're watching this because you just wanted to gather some additional information about some of my experience in pitfalls to improve your product development teams, then hopefully it has helped to provide 1 or 2 nuggets of information. But if you are wanting to design a new product and launch that into the market, maybe you need support from a design consultancy, or maybe you want a second opinion, please feel free to book in for a call. There's a link here, discovery call. I think actually we've renamed this product strategy call. But if you go onto our website, you will be able to find this link. It's actually on our contacts page. So I put this here. You can copy paste that, but it is on our contacts page. I'm available normally every day, but maybe half an hour a day, an hour a day on some of these. So if you just click through these, you can check my availability. We can have a call and we can talk through your product development project and to see whether this is something that we can help you with. And I did allude to this at the beginning. We have written and launched the Product Innovators Handbook. This has received, we've only had six ratings on Amazon. I haven't proactively marketed this, but it is a useful guide for those that are wanting to develop a new product. So I think it's £15 or so at the moment. Amazon do drop the price every now and again. We don't have control over that. So please get a copy. As I say, it has had really good feedback, and even people that have been designing products for a number of years have found this useful. If you do purchase a copy, I'd be very grateful, and please just reach out and let me know what you think. That'd be helpful. So thank you very much. Hopefully this has been valuable, whether you've watched this live or whether you're watching this back on YouTube. This has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour. But hopefully today I've talked through what I believe to be many of the pitfalls involved in designing a new product, and how we can increase your chances of success and mitigate your risk in the design process and following launch to increase your chances of market success. So in terms of Q&A, if you do have any questions, feel free to email us at design@iterate-uk.com, or you can email me directly, which is gethin@iterate-uk.com. So thanks very much for your time. Please reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions, happy to book a call. Hopefully you found this useful and we can connect soon. Thank you.